Right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the League Express podcast. My name's Jake Kearnan, and joining me as always is the editor of League Express, Martyn Sadler. And Martyn, we've got another pretty special guest today, mate. Would you like to introduce him?
I certainly would, yes. Rhodri Jones. Welcome, Rhodri. Chief Executive of RL Commercial. Very important figure in the game, particularly at this stage in the season, Rhodri. We're in the playoffs. We've already had some thrilling matches, culminating, of course, with that incredible try that St Helens scored. I want to ask you about that and about its reception on social media. Welcome to this podcast, and I'm sure over the next half hour or so we'll have a really great conversation to discuss some of the current issues in the game.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me, and good to see you both again.
Great.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Rhodri. I guess it's Rhodri's second time coming on, Martyn, so he knows
It
the
is.
process. Probably the first time virtually, mate. But yeah, Rhodri, what did you make of the weekend's matches, mate? Looks like, I mean, I know over here in Australia they were playing the highlights of that Saints last minute try, but the on-field product at the moment it's in great shape.
Yeah, I think clearly the headline came out of Headingley on Saturday night. It was definitely out of the chair moment, wasn't it, at the end? And when you look back and think where St Helens were on the field of play before, when that set first started, they were literally on their own goal line in that bottom left-hand corner as the TV cameras looked, and it's phenomenal. And just, yeah, never write off the Saints is the famous saying, and wide to west and left to right now, I think is the new phrase. It was an unbelievable ending, and to pick up on, I guess, the traction something like that gives us, to be able to capitalize on the skills that the players showed in that last final dying moments. Yeah, that clip has gone viral. It's gone around the world. It's got picked up in Australia on Sunday morning, as Martyn alluded to. So, things like that just push the sport beyond its natural or normal boundaries, I should say.
Absolutely.
And that's to your point, Martyn. It's that time of the year where we want to make headlines for the right reasons, and something like that on Saturday night certainly does that for us.
Have you any idea, Rhodri, how many people have viewed that try on social media? Somebody said to me yesterday that on Sky Sports channels it had been watched more than 200,000 times. And, that won't be the only channel, of course, where it's being viewed. I dare say, goodness knows how many people might have seen it by now.
Yeah, I'd say into the millions. We
Yeah.
we were posting it with immediacy, as did Sky Sports. I know the BBC picked up on our collaboration on Instagram, which automatically puts you into that kind of big hundreds of thousands, if not millions of audience. It's gone into Australia. It's been picked up in America. Some non-traditional sporting channels have picked up on it. So I'd say it's pretty up there in terms of how it ranks in terms of how many people have seen it.
And I was going to say, is there any way that you can actually link buying tickets, for example, for the grand final or for the Wembley Test, to that piece of action? Because that would be the payoff, wouldn't it? If from all those views, if even a fraction of those people were persuaded to buy tickets for one of the big games at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's our job, isn't it? Here at Rugby League Commercial, it's about using clips like Saturday night to promote the sport, to promote the entertainment, the drama, the out of the seat instances that we have in our sport that we're lucky to experience. And that's our job, to push people towards the grand final, to say, look, there's more of this to come, not just at the grand final this week as well in the semi-finals, but don't forget we've got the Ashes as well at the end of the year. And I think, pick Harry Robertson as an example. He was an integral part to that last play for St Helens. He's part of that England squad at the moment, awaiting decision time from Sean. But if Harry were to get that nod from Sean, then guess what clip we will use to highlight that Harry could be playing at Wembley, could be playing at Old Trafford as well. Don't forget, in 2 weeks' time.
Yes. Well, let's hope Sean picks him.
Yeah, well, that one's out of my hands. So yeah,
Yeah,
we'll see what Sean
yes,
has to say.
we can't anticipate who Sean will pick, unfortunately.
Yeah, Rodri, mate, just speaking of the Ashes, how's things been going? Is there a lot of interest at the moment? I know we've obviously got two sellouts. We're trying to sell out Wembley. How are ticket sales looking at the moment, mate?
Yeah, I think look, we've talked about this before. You know, when we announced the series, the demand in terms of sign up for ticket information and purchasing of tickets was unprecedented. I don't think I've seen anything like it in rugby league before, and that followed through to the ability to sell those those two venues out before we'd gone on general sales. So Headingley's done 19,000 and Everton over 50,000. So, as I said before, the focus really has been on London for us, accepting that there would be an initial rush to buy tickets in the best places at Wembley. And then we knew that over the summer period, when people go away on holiday, when demands on money are elsewhere, perhaps summer holidays, etc., that we knew that this period now from kind of mid-September through to the 25th of October were going to be really key. So we've kept the momentum going, albeit the ticket sales have slowed slightly over the summer period, which is what we expected. But we have seen over the last 10 days or so it pick back up again, which probably coincides with two things really. People are now back from summer holidays, kids are back in schools, they're now looking at their diaries between now and Christmas to see what's in the calendar. Their own club seasons may be finished or may be finishing as well. So people are now looking for their next rugby league hit. And also our campaign in London went live last week. So across the tube stations, across the bus network, train network, you suddenly started to seeing a bit more visibility about the game at Wembley. And we've also worked with the stadium as well now that they've just finished their concert season with Oasis on Sunday. We'll now see a bit more activity in around the Wembley area as well. So where we've got to at the moment, we've sold just over 115,000 tickets for the Ashes. And that's easily broken down, and that kind of tells you that we've just gone over the 45,000 barrier at Wembley, which I think is probably where we expected to be at this point. I think our initial target was 53,000, and that in kind of layman's terms is the lower and the middle bowl at Wembley. That's 53,000. So that was kind of our first target. And as you know, after the Challenge Cup final in June, we opened that upper tier because of the demand on tickets. So our capacity increased from June onwards. So our next target after 53 is 57,000. And 57 is quite an important one. I remember it but Martin probably a bit more. 1994, there were 57,000 in the stadium that day for Great Britain versus Australia. So that's the record attendance for a GB Australia game here in the UK. So that really is our next natural target. But for me, I'm confident that we'll get above 60,000 come that day. That's another 6-7 weeks away. We've got a lot of hard work to go, but I think the message from me to everybody is, we've got a huge opportunity to get behind the England team in that first test for a series that hasn't been taken place in over 20 years. And we can't buy tickets now for Headingley or Everton. Wembley is the only place to be able to buy a ticket, and I'd encourage people, if they are thinking about going, to get their tickets.
I think the biggest ever crowd was 72,000, wasn't it, in 1992 for the World Cup final of that year when the Aussies just beat us 10-6, I seem to remember, much to our eternal disappointment, of course. But that's the biggest. If you could get anywhere near that figure, that'd be pretty impressive.
Yeah, look, I'd be absolutely delighted. If we went beyond the kind of 65 towards 70,000 number, and look, that's got to be the aspiration for us. We've got to. We can't leave any stone unturned, Martin. That's the reality. This is such a big opportunity for us as Rugby League Commercial, as the sport, as England Rugby League, as rugby league as a sport itself, it's such a big opportunity to present ourselves in such a positive way. And don't forget, the crowd can have a significant impact on the performance of players. And I just encourage any England fan, any England Rugby League fan, any English fan to go and support England Rugby League on that day.
Absolutely, yeah, I couldn't agree more. And any help that anybody in the media can give to get reaching that target would be certainly very gladly given, I'm sure.
Yeah, and we've got a job there as well. We need to provide stories, we need to provide narrative. We are pushing Sean constantly around. Look, are there any snippets that you can give us to talk about players in contention? What about the players coming back from Australia? Some of those have finished their seasons. Some of them are due across in the next kind of 7 to 10 days. Can we kind of release those early? Anything to develop that narrative of who's going to be involved, who's playing. Australia are doing their bit with players committing or not committing to the Australia team as well. So that creates stories. I've seen James Tedesco's pulled out this morning. So
yeah, let's hope a few more do.
the more stories, the more talkability that we can have around the series, the better.
Absolutely. I mean, Sean's not a natural for dealing with the media, is he? Let's face it. He's not the sort of Eddie Jones type figure that the rugby union people used to have. And Sean's very reluctant to show his cards. Really, to be perfectly honest, he wants to keep it all, within his own control, without giving too many hints about who he's going to pick, which must be a bit frustrating sometimes.
Oh yeah, it can be challenging. It can be challenging, but I also get it from his perspective. He is solely,
his only aim is winning.
His sole focus is about winning. He has to do everything he can for him and his players to win the series. So as much as the marketing machine over here and me prodding him to say, look, I need you to give us something, then I also understand it from the other perspective. He also is, from what I have seen of Sean, is that he cares passionately about his players. He wants the very best for his players. He treats them with the utmost respect, because I think that way he gets the respect back from those players as well. And I can understand why he's hesitant to perhaps not provide us with some stories, because he's very respectful of players, where they're at the moment, what they need to still aspire to be able to be in contention for selection. So I can see how it works both ways.
That's very diplomatic of you, I must say.
Ultimately, Martin, the reality is if we win the Ashes this autumn, that elevates the sport ultimately. So
absolutely,
we have to find the balance between promotion, marketing, ticket sales, but also giving Sean the best ability to win on the field, because ultimately that will be the biggest driver for the sport into next season. What platform that will be going into Super League 2026 off the back of a winning Ashes series. So yeah, we have to take that into consideration.
Also, I was just going to ask you, Roger, like it's been, I don't know, I think it might have been 2023 or early 2024 when we last had you on, mate. Lots changed since then commercially. What sort of place is the game in right now? Obviously, it'll be a big boost having the Ashes. We've seen what the British and Irish Lions tour has done for Australian rugby, pretty much cleared all their debt over here. So I guess that will have a big impact on the finance side of things this year. But how much, I guess, has the game grown commercially since we last spoke a couple of years back?
And I think I'll broaden the word commercial to across kind of the pillars that we work within here at Rugby League Commercial. So you're looking at attendances. So for the first time in many a year, if not the record, we've gone over 10,000 average attendance in Super League. That in itself is a great story, and that's just over 1.6 million people attending men's Super League matches this season. So, the benefit the clubs have seen through more people going through turnstiles has a positive commercial impact on those clubs. Digitally, we've talked about our digital transformation for 2.5 years probably now. we're kind of coming to that period where in year 3 we're seeing the fruits of our labour over the last 2 years, and it's been a record digital performance year for us, and that's not only meant that our audiences have become bigger and more engaged, it's also meant that we've started to commercialise that digital audience for the first time properly, but it's taken some building blocks to get us to that point. Our sponsor income is at an all-time high. We've broken through that £5 million income barrier for the second time in a row. We just scraped over it last year, and we've gone again this year. So, all credit to the actual commercial team here in delivering and developing partnerships, meaningful partnerships. We've got a couple of announcements to come this week, next week, in the build up to the end of the domestic and into the international series as well, which will benefit ultimately the Rugby League commercial P&L. So from that perspective, I'd say we've had a good year, and the Ashes is the icing on the cake for us, really, and that's where we can benefit the most. In terms of exceeding our ticketing targets, exceeding our commercial targets, bringing in new audience through the BBC lens, selling those TV rights to the BBC. That's all, dare I say it, cherry on the top really for us, because when we set the budgets this time last year, we didn't know the Ashes was coming here. So, yes, we've got to consider paying for the stadia and Australia being here for 3.5 weeks, etc. But we are very, 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 very optimistic that come the end of the series, there will be profit derived from the series, which obviously cascades back into the clubs.
Can I just ask you, Rhodri, what the future holds for you, for NRL Commercial as an organisation? Because we've seen the recent changes at the RFL, and it looks to me from the outside as though the plan is for NRL Commercial to be more fully merged into the Rugby Football League, although I may be wrong on that. I'm not quite sure precisely where things stand at the moment. But how do you see the future unfolding in say the next 12 months in terms of the governance of the game?
I think I'm pretty clear, because I think it's quite a simple equation, really. I think what we've seen over the last 2.5, nearly 3 years now with the creation of Rugby League Commercial is there's been an absolute focus on the commerciality of the sport. And as I've just shared there, the numbers that we've delivered this year demonstrate that having that laser focus on the commerciality of the sport is delivering. There is a governance side of the sport that needs looking after, that needs managing. And yes, there's been some significant changes that have gone on there over the last couple of months. But it, I can't get away from the fact that when you put focus into a certain area of the business and it's delivering results, then for me, I think it's still important that exists. Now, it might be that it becomes a bit more merged with higher up the ladder in terms of having one board, but in terms of the function of Rugby League Commercial,
it can't end, can it?
It has to remain, not least in the next 12 months to answer your question, because we're about to embark on a new rights cycle for broadcast that comes to an end in 2026. We cannot lose focus. The reason why Rugby League Commercial existed, the reason why we have the relationship with IMG, was to deliver bigger, better, more people, and ultimately a better TV deal for the sport. That's we're going to find out, the reality of our work over the last 3 years in the next 3 to 6 months, and then after that we have to go away and deliver whatever the outcome is as well. So for me, it's to answer the question specifically, it's quite a simple one for me, in that we can't lose that laser focus, because ultimately the function that I lead is the money generating part of the sport, and that's what everybody needs. Everybody needs the money derived through Rugby League Commercial, and they need more of it. So you have to have some real focus on that area.
As you say, the most crucial element of that is the TV contract, and Um, that's going to be. I assume work has already started on that, Rhodri, on researching the audience and looking at what it's feasible to ask for the TV contract and looking at potential um, other broadcasters that might or streamers that might want to have a part of the game. Presumably, IMG will have a central role in that, and I wonder what your thoughts are about the fact that let's assume that we are going up to 14 teams next year, and that the panel headed by Lord Kane does find two additional teams to put in. What impact do you think that will have on the likely TV deal, for example? Would you, and obviously we can't influence which clubs are going to be elevated, but I would imagine if, for example, London were to be one of them, that would be probably have a fairly positive impact on a likely outcome of a TV deal.
Yeah, I think simply 14 teams means 7 games, which is one more game a weekend than what we currently have now. So, in effect, that means there's more content available. I think 26 will be a bridging year, let's call it, with if it goes to 14 teams. In terms of, at the moment, we have a contract with Sky for 6 games. There's an ongoing conversation with Sky as our contracted partner around the possibility of the 7th game next year. But I think looking ahead to 2027, what 7 games gives you, similar to 6, if it remains at 12, is a content mix. So it means we've got enough content to not have to put all the games or every game into one bucket, which is what the current situation is, with all 6 games being with Sky. So whether it's 6 or whether it's 7 games a week going forward, what it does give us is options in terms of how we divide the games up. That gives us the opportunity to speak to potentially more than just one broadcaster. You've mentioned streamers there, Martyn. And don't forget, we also have Super League Plus as well, which a number of club owners are big fans of. They want to see it grow. They want to see it develop and improve and become a bit more of a, not just a live content or live match platform. They want to see other content on there. So yeah, I guess the more games we have, or like I say, if it stays at 6, but if we have more games, it just gives us more of a content mix ability.
Would you anticipate having every game at a discrete kickoff time so that we avoid the clashes we've seen this year?
Yeah, look, I think this year we've been better this year than last year. Last year when we had 3 games going up against each other on a Friday night, 8 o'clock wasn't great for us in terms of audiences. We've narrowed that down to 2 games on a Friday night, and I think we've had a better spread of fixtures. I think the bit for me was listening to Sky in terms of them wanting the Thursday and the Friday night fixture locked in. So we managed to lock in the Thursdays until round 24, I think it was, this year, which was important. So we weren't moving club matches around.
Yeah.
Friday nights is the prime spot for Sky, and then extending it through to a Sunday. I think the one thing I noticed last year was we were never part of the sports narrative on a Monday morning because we didn't have games on a Sunday on certain occasions. With having games on a Sunday, more often than not, when you are driving into work on a Monday morning, listening to the radio, national radio, there is reference to the Super League results from the day before. That is such a small thing, but I think it's an important thing. Interestingly, yesterday morning, we obviously didn't have any games on Sunday. We weren't part of the news bulletin, sports bulletin yesterday morning. So little things like that are really important. If we stay at 6, I would imagine we'll stick to similar scheduling as we've done this year. If we go to 7, we're going to have to look, and the reality is we're going to try and have to spread it again and find another slot. Again, looking at our cousin code in rugby union, the Prem Rugby guys, they've got a 1 o'clock Sunday slot now, which is a new slot for them. They've got 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock. We don't have anything kicking off at 1 o'clock on a Sunday, as an example. We don't have anything on a Saturday night either. So
I was going to say, the Saints Leeds Saints on Saturday night. Have you had any feedback on viewing figures for that game from Sky? Because
Yeah, so the only comparison we have is last year's playoff game at 6 o'clock. Last year, 5:30, 6 o'clock, and this game this year has performed better than last year's game, by a distance actually. So you could say that 8 o'clock on a Saturday is a viable option for us. And yeah, that all goes into the mix. And as I said to you before, Martyn, you are more than welcome to come and sit into the fixture planning process in November, because it is a head scratcher at times.
Yeah, I can well imagine. Yeah, no, I'd welcome being able to do that. And thanks for the thanks for the invitation.
Careful what you wish for. Yeah,
I was going to say I'm just wondering whether I ought to accept or not. But
I'm just sorry. I was going to say I'm just mindful of time because we know you've got to run, Rhodri. I just picked up on one thing you said there about Super League Plus, mate, and wanting to expand that. I've got a suggestion. Take it or leave it, mate. Free of charge. I reckon a documentary around the rise to Super League, if there are two clubs found suitable to go up into Super League. It's a little 3 or 4 part documentary documenting their rise into Super League. I think that'd be very interesting for the fans.
Okay, we'll take that one on board. That's
take it or leave it.
That's not a new suggestion. It's not a new idea, but I'll give that one to you.
Absolutely.
Great stuff, mate. Well, thanks for joining us today, mate.
Pleasure.
Jake and I are going to carry on
Sure.
talking about the games at the weekend and previewing this weekend's games, but I'm aware you've got a meeting at 9 o'clock, Rhodri, so it's been a pleasure to have you, and hopefully we'll have you again before too long.
Yeah, that's been great. Thanks very much for having me.
Thanks a lot.
Nice. Thanks, Rhodri.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Oh, what'd you make of that chat, mate, with Rhodri? It was a brief chat, but he did have to run.
No, he made some good points, and I really hope it's interesting what he said about the target figures for Wembley: 53,000 initially, moving up to 57,000. I mean, I would certainly hope that they'd get more than 60,000, and I'd love to think that they were going to challenge that 72,000 figure that we got in 1992. Obviously, I'm not quite sure. He mentioned that they've launched a campaign in London. In the underground stations and so on and so forth, and then obviously without seeing that campaign, it's difficult to comment on it. But I think I would certainly hope that some of those people who have watched that incredible St Helens try at the weekend will think, is it worth going to Wembley to see a bit more of this, so to speak.
Especially if they're getting that advertising out in the tube and things like that, where there's millions and millions of foot traffic on the daily.
Absolutely, yeah.
But yeah, mate. Hopefully, as we approach the Ashes series, those ticket sales do pop up, because approach Wembley would be awesome, I think.
It would be, yes. Now, one thing we ought to talk about, by the way, now it's just the two of us. We've talked about the St Helens' incredible win at Leeds on Saturday night, but I've been receiving emails from Leeds Rhinos supporters in a very angry mood, because they all started emailing me saying that the Jon Bennison try, which was scored on 74 minutes, and at Leeds were winning 14-6 with just over 6 minutes to go. It looked as though they were into the semi-final at Hull KR, and then Jon Bennison scored a try, and the referee in the game itself, Jack Smith, didn't award the try because he thought that, I think he thought that Bennison may not have actually reached the line with the ball, and there's also a slight suspicion of a double movement, but he referred it to the video referee, and that was Chris Kendall. And Chris Kendall looked at one angle, and it looked from that angle as though the ball had touched the line, and he awarded the try, and he didn't actually look at any other angles. But then on the TV screen, after the try had been given, they looked at another angle that made the try look very dubious, to say the least. And Since then, the RFL has put out a statement saying that the try shouldn't have been given. Well, you can imagine how that's gone down with Leeds fans there,
Yeah.
and presumably the Leeds. I can imagine what Brad Arthur thinks and what the Leeds players think. Um, it's a sort of, if it was a mistake, it's a sort of mistake that shouldn't be made, really. And you've got to have complete sympathy for Leeds, because if that try hadn't been awarded, Jake, I don't think there's any way that St Helens would have won the game, and we probably wouldn't have seen that brilliant try at the end that we did see. So,
Yeah.
it's just one of those things. But mistakes influence the outcome of games, unfortunately. But now, of course, it's too late to do anything about it.
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? Because, I think like you can hear the commentary when they're reviewing tries, and it's a very slow process, I find, in the Super League. Just getting a different
Mm,
angle and then getting them to slow it down or go back a few
mm.
frames. I know in the NRL there's times when a try is scored and you don't really see conclusive evidence in the replays that it was a try, but the video referees over here seem to have all the different angles up on the screen in front of them, and they can just rule without necessarily
Yes, they
having it
have the
up.
different angles at the same time, don't they? In the bunker,
Yeah.
in the NRL bunker. Whereas that doesn't seem to be the case with the
Mm,
referee, the video referee who's, I think, sitting in a studio in Wilmslow. He seems to have one angle at a time. And
mm,
when that first angle did look quite convincing, really, to be perfectly honest, if you watch the game. And it wasn't too surprising that Chris Kendall thought it was conclusive, but it seems that it wasn't. And he should have looked at the second angle. And I think that probably suggests to me that video referees perhaps ought to be specialist operators, rather than allowing a referee to become a video referee in those circumstances. Perhaps we ought to have specialist video referees as opposed to specialist referees. Um, I mean, I don't know who operates the bunker in the NRL, but I would be very surprised if it was existing referees. I suspect it's probably referees who have recently retired from their on-field duties.
yeah, I think it's probably a mix of both. I know at
Mm,
times like someone like Grant Atkins will be in the bunker and Ashley
right.
Klein. Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to that, mate. I think if you could have someone like a specialist that had control of all the angles, knew what to look for, was good at that communication with whoever is in control of those angles, because sometimes that's the hardest part, saying, hang on, no, no, slow that down, or take it back a frame, or speed that up a little bit. I must admit, when I saw the try, I first thought, there's got to be a blade of grass there that's touched the ball. We might just not be able to see it because it was very close. Mind you, I didn't see that other angle, so
Mm.
I can't comment on that. But you have to feel for the Leeds fans,
Oh gosh, yeah.
because it wasn't the deciding try, but tries like that, they swing the momentum. And yeah, for your season to end on a bit of a dodgy call like that, it's got to hurt.
Well, it certainly does, and it is doing. As far as Leeds are concerned, it sort of shows, doesn't it? The dividing line between success and failure is so narrow, and can sometimes tip over into the fact that an error has an incredible effect. I mean, obviously, if the game hadn't been so close, that error wouldn't have counted for quite so much, would it? If it had been a 30-point margin or something, it wouldn't have mattered in the same
Mm.
way. But when an error actually influences the outcome of a game, that's that's very unfortunate for Leeds, to say the least. But
Mm.
that's how
That's
it's
it.
gone, and it's St Helens who are going to Hull Kingston Rovers this weekend on Saturday,
Yeah,
not
and that's
not
it. And
Leeds.
and like it's hard not to let that spoil what was such a great contest.
Oh
It's
yeah, yeah.
created the moment of the year, you might almost say, with that left to right, right to left try they scored.
Yeah.
Mate, that might be one of the best last second plays I've seen.
Oh, I'm sure
Um,
it was. It certainly compares with the wide to west from 25 years ago, almost exactly 25 years ago when St Helens beat Bradford. An incredibly, important and probably greater than that, really, because that ball went through 16 pairs of hands, and it involves some incredible play by Harry Robertson, avoiding four or five tacklers, and then Tristan Saylor giving the most audacious flick pass, behind his back, and it going, must have gone about 25 meters to Matt Whitley, who continued the move. So it really was a try for the ages, wasn't it, that one?
well, that's it. And, still, like I said, I preface this by saying disappointing that first decision when, against the Leeds, but there was three or four defenders there that got their hands on Robertson and he just kept stepping and shrugging off players. There was a few, poor attempts, you might say. You know, keeping in mind everyone's fatigued in the 80th minute, but they did have their opportunities to shut that try down, and
Yeah.
Saints were just too freakish.
I don't think the Leeds players could really believe what was happening to them, to be honest.
No.
It was
And that
just
Robertson run, he drew the whole defensive line into that corner, and then as soon as that flick pass got let go, it was almost like a 4-on-1.
yes,
And
absolutely.
yeah, but mate, yeah, that highlight, as we said, it's done wonders for the game. We've just heard Rhodri talk about, how many viewers that video has gotten, and I know that Matty Johns was playing it on his show over here on Sunday night, and there's been a few other shows playing it and social media accounts, so it's
Great.
great exposure for the game.
Yes.
But
Then,
yeah,
of course, we had the game the night before, Leigh versus Wakefield. A bit more one-sided, that game. Leigh were winning 18-0 at half-time, and they won, I think the final score was 26-10. Um, Leigh came out ferociously in the first half, and I don't think I've seen a side dominate a first half quite as much as Leigh dominated Wakefield in that 40 minutes. They played really aggressive, mistake-free football, and they were absolutely outstanding. Edwin Apapi, I think, is still playing, he's back to his best for Leigh, and Lachlan Lamb had a great influence, although Lachlan Lamb was involved in the most controversial incident in the game. I don't know whether you're aware of this, Jake, but during the second half, the Wakefield halfback Mason Leno spoke to the referee and alleged that Lachlan Lamb had been abusive towards him in some way that he didn't actually specify. So nobody's quite sure what he's accused Lachlan Lamb of saying, but. The RFL, it went to the RFL match review panel on Monday, and the match review panel decided to defer a decision on that and call for evidence from both sides, both Leigh and Wakefield. And what it means is that Lachlan Lamb, at the moment, is innocent until proved guilty, and he will be able to play in this Friday's game against Wigan at the Brick Community Stadium. But his case might well be heard next Monday, which, if Leigh win at Wigan this Friday, there is a potential possibility that, if he were found guilty of something, that he wouldn't be able to play in the grand final, which would be an enormous shame. And it remains to be seen whether Mason Leno will now wish to pursue that case against him. I believe that the Wakefield players, I think Mason and some of the Wakefield players are in Dublin at the moment, having exited the playoffs at the weekend. I think they've all gone to let their hair down a bit in Dublin. So whether he will continue with that remains to be seen. Who knows whether. And precisely what it was that was said, none of us know. So it remains to be seen what the outcome of that situation is.
yeah. Look, it's hard to say, and also like even if it does go ahead, this investigation, sadly, unless it's sort of picked up on a microphone or a referee's mic, it's going to be very hard for either side to prove what was actually said. So I don't
Absolutely.
know how. Yeah, it's tough, and we hope there was no abuse.
Well,
Hopefully, it's a
I
big
mean, players
misunderstanding.
do
But
sledge each other, don't they?
mm,
And I mean, sledging has got a long history in
mm,
rugby league. But the key thing is that when it becomes very serious if there's any racial element to it, for example,
yeah,
and that's when it becomes totally unacceptable. So let's hope that that wasn't the case in this case. But as I say, we don't know. We can't comment. Lachlan Lamb is an absolutely brilliant player. He won our Albert Goldthorpe Medal this year, and he's also been voted as the Player of the Year for the Rugby League Writers and Broadcasters Association. So that's how good he is, and I'm very glad that he's going to be playing against Wigan on Friday. And I hope that if they do beat Wigan, which is obviously a big ask for them, that he will be in the grand final playing against Hull KR or St Helens in that particular game.
yeah, absolutely, mate. One thing, just for me, watching the extended highlights here at home was, geez, that Leigh crowd was going off on when they play Friday night. Like you just feel the atmosphere coming through the
Oh
speakers
gosh,
here at
yes.
home. They've got such a good home crowd advantage.
A lot of Wakefield fans there as well. Yes, it made it very atmospheric.
Yeah, absolutely. But mate, do we want to touch on the weekend's games in the NRL next, or
Oh
do you want to
yes.
make your predictions for this weekend
Well,
specifically?
let's go to the NRL now because
Yeah.
there were some terrific games in front of full houses at both Melbourne and at Brisbane. Melbourne beat Cronulla reasonably, well, I wouldn't say easily, but it was 22-14, wasn't it? So not easy, but they always looked as though they were going to probably get the win in that game. I thought Cronulla, I mean, Cronulla are such a good side, aren't they? And I'm so impressed by a player like Blake Brayley, who um, potentially qualifies to play for England. Although I think he said that because I think his mother was born in Liverpool, if I understand it correctly. But I think he's now thrown in his lot with Australia, and I'd be amazed if he wasn't selected to tour with Australia for the Ashes. And Cronulla are a side that punches above its weight, really, because they've got the smallest stadium in the competition. They lack quite a few. They lack a centre of excellence that the other clubs have, and yet under Craig Fitzgibbon they're incredibly competitive. And Melbourne really had to pull it out to beat them. But the real great game was the Brisbane Melbourne game, not Brisbane Panthers game on Sunday at Suncorp, which I think you were at, weren't you?
Yeah,
And
mate.
just tell us a bit about the game and about the atmosphere and what it was like to be a Broncos fan in that cauldron.
Oh, mate. Yeah, it was awesome. We had some really good tickets too because my mate's family, they're Broncos members and they have their selected seats every season. And it was sort of, how would I explain it? Probably on the sideline, maybe 6 rows back around the 30 metre, 40 metre mark. So we're pretty much close to dead centre on the sideline. And yeah, the first half was a little bit nerve-wracking, mate. Penrith were,
14
quick
nil.
out the gate. Yeah, 14
Yeah.
nil going into to half time there. And I don't know. I think that was a pretty good scoreline given how much momentum Penrith had. I just felt like the Broncos' fitness and their desperation defending the try line probably kept them in the match. But I think towards the end of that first half, leading into the second half, things started to get a little bit fiery, and I think that's when the crowd really started getting behind the Broncos. We saw the Ezra Mam, Nathan Cleary, Liam Martin incident where there was a bit
Mm.
of a push and shove, and Liam Martin came over the top. And ever since, like, as soon as that happened, the crowd just felt like they were just absolutely giving it to Liam Martin for what felt like 5 minutes until Grant
Yeah.
Atkins, the referee, sorted it all out. But from then on, it just felt like that momentum started to shift, and the atmosphere at the game was a full house, and that was probably the first time I've been to Suncorp, with a capacity crowd, and for a club game, I think that's the loudest I've ever heard it. It would rival big, Origin deciders at Suncorp, and yeah, when they scored that last try, Adam Reynolds kicked that conversion. It just felt like the Broncos had just done enough to secure the win, but
Well, what a
I
try that
was.
was, and what a pass it was by Reece Walsh. I mean, Reece Walsh was fairly quiet for much of the game, but that final try that he created with that sort of over the top basketball style pass was just incredible, wasn't it? Really, and
Mm,
it was a pass I thought worthy of winning a game, and it did do. It
yeah,
was amazing.
well, that's it. And that's the I think Penrith's defensive system just they did such a good job of shutting down that attacking flair that Reece Walsh brings and that speed. But you just could tell towards the end of the match, like fatigue wise, the Broncos were just the fitter team. And I
Yeah, yeah.
know like Michael Maguire's copped a lot of flack for the torturous preseason he put them through, but it's starting to show, why it is successful now. And yeah, I think that was probably one of the more memorable games I've ever watched, mate. And yeah, I've never been more proud of the Broncos. It was just an awesome experience.
Well, you might be even more proud this weekend if they beat Melbourne in the grand final, and that's
Oh yeah.
really a grand final to look forward to, isn't it? It's going to be
Mm.
an amazing game,
I don't know if
and
Sydney fans will be happy that there won't be any Sydney teams playing at Sydney next week or this weekend, but I think
the last
in the
time
end,
that happened, I think, was in 2015 when it was Brisbane and North Queensland, wasn't it?
yeah, that's right. And then, yeah, I mean, I know the Broncos played the Storm in 2006 as well, so
Yeah,
there's a little bit of history there between the clubs, but it's going to be a great matchup. And just another note on the Storm Sharks game, seeing Jerome Hughes come back 20 something days after having surgery on a broken wrist. He had a
mm.
massive arm guard on, but just seeing how well he played with plates and screws in his arm, um, how tough is he? He scored a great
Yeah,
try.
well,
But yeah,
it's tougher than me. That's one thing for sure. But yeah, amazing. It was
yeah,
amazing, and presumably he'll be available for the grand final as well. It's going to be a hell of a game. I was really pleased to see Adam Reynolds back, and Adam Reynolds clearly has ice cool veins, doesn't he? To kick that goal from the touchline to win the game was just absolutely magnificent, and he was as cool as anything doing it. And when he kicked, he just raised his arm, you know, very sort of deliberately in a show of triumph. And the Broncos just had to last the last 2 or 3 minutes before before the final hooter went, and it was just absolutely amazing. It really
yeah.
was.
And then just towards the end of the match there, when it got to last tackle, they were attacking the line and they didn't really know what to do. You saw Nathan Cleary sprinting back to get behind the 40 for that attempt at a 2-point field goal. And my heart sort of sunk as I saw him running back because we've seen him hit so many before.
Yeah, yeah.
But the effort from Payne Haas sprinting through to put pressure on him, they're the game-winning plays you want to see. And,
They certainly
you know,
are.
yeah. But looking forward to this weekend, mate. I'm hoping the Broncos get the win. I was debating on flying down to watch it, but I think flights are like $800 or $900 Australian return,
But they are, yes.
which is ridiculous. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I'll probably watch it from the comfort of my living room, I think.
Profiting from the number of Broncos fans wanting to fly down. I dare say there'll
Uh,
be a lot of chartered flights going down, presumably.
it was either that or I drive 11 or 12 hours to get to Sydney from the Sunshine Coast, and I don't know if I've got that in me.
Yes. Well, let's look ahead
Yeah,
to the Super League games coming up this weekend now.
yeah, mate.
And we ought to also look ahead to the Championship Grand Final over here, which will be
Mm,
between York and Toulouse. But let's look at the Super League games first. And the first one is Wigan and Leigh on Friday night. And as I say, I think Leigh, are in with a real genuine chance. They beat Wigan in the first game of the season by the remarkable scoreline of 1-0, just one field goal that they scored to win that game. I think they've played Wigan twice again, and each team has won once in the other two fixtures. So Leigh are entitled to go into that game feeling confident. And Wigan, of course, we all know that Wigan, rise to the occasion at the end of the season, which they always seem to be able to do to peak at the right time. So, but it's a hard one to call. I mean, Wigan have obviously got Jay Field and Bevan French as their key weapons, and the question is, will Leigh be able to handle them, and will Leigh be able to get off to the sort of start that they enjoyed against Wakefield last Friday night? And who's to say? I find it really hard to call, Jake.
I agree, mate. It's one of those matches where Leigh just have to take it to them from the jump and really try and win with their line speed and defence and try and just win the possession game, win the territory game, kick long and just defend hard. And, we saw that in round one and it worked for them. I think they're just going to have to take that same recipe and use it this weekend, mate, because, so much attacking flair in this Wigan side. But Leigh have done it before and they can do it again this weekend.
Well, a year ago, they were playing in the same game. It was Leigh had won the first round of the playoffs by winning at Salford in a very tight game. But then they went to Wigan and they lost 38 points to 0. They were absolutely hammered by Wigan in at the same stage last year. And I think that really still hurts quite a lot of people connected with Leigh. I think it still hurts Adrian Lamb. It still hurts some of the Leigh players who were around for that game. Their team has changed quite radically, though, this year. But they've still got Lamb and Ipapi as the key components of their side. And I think we'll see a much tighter game this year. I certainly don't expect another 38-0 type scoreline. And, I think I still can't quite see Wigan losing it. That's the thing. But, after all, Penrith lost at Brisbane at the weekend, so maybe, Wigan might lose against Leigh on Friday night. I think Wigan will probably edge it, but not by more than 6 points on Friday.
Yeah. And, mate, I just hope it's a real tight contest, and I'd probably have to agree with you on that one. I think, Wigan just have too much attacking flair, but as I said, if Leigh can just take it to them, go in with a siege mentality.
You never know.
Yeah, we'll never know.
Then we have Hull KR and St Helens on Saturday. And, Hull KR have had a week off. They struggled, towards the end of the regular season. They just held on to win the League Leaders' Shield. But I think they needed a week off more than anybody else did, because they've played almost every week of the season so far, apart from 1 week off in July. So I think I'm anticipating that Hull KR will be back to their best against St Helens on Saturday. And I think St Helens may have played their grand final already with that win at Leeds. And I think Hull KR could win probably by about 10 to 16 points on Saturday, Jake. I think obviously Michael Lewis and some of the other guys, will feel that they've got a lot to prove after a dip in form towards the end of the season. Of course, it could be, if they don't win, it would be Jared Warrior-Hargreaves' last game as a professional player, and I'm sure he'll want to extend that to the grand final. So, I think I still don't think, you see, the problem for Saints is that they've still not got their half-back combinations sorted out, to be honest. They played Jack Wellesby and Johnny Lomax there against Leeds, and I'm just not absolutely sure that that's got them firing at their best, to be honest. So I think they might just find Hull KR one step too far.
It made I know in the NRL over the last weekend, the two teams that got the week off, they both won on the weekend. So there's certainly a benefit there to having a bit of rest. And as you touched on, Hull KR looked like they certainly needed one, mate.
Well,
But yeah, this time of year, mate, you want your team to be playing consistently with those with your spine sorted. And I agree with you that all that chopping and changing with the Saints spine could go against them this weekend, but I'm expecting it to be a lively atmosphere out at Raven Park this weekend, mate. I'm
I
sure
think it will be.
the Rovers fans will be out in droves, and yeah, I think they'll be extra motivated to get Warrior Hargraves that win.
I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will. The other thing that I wrote about in League Express this week was whether St Helens, with that win at Leeds, and if they did win at Hull KR, whether they would secure a new contract for their coach Paul Wellens, because a lot of St Helens fans have not been desperately happy with the way that their teams played this year. Certainly compared to the St Helens of old, when they used to have players like Tommy Martin and Sean Long. They were an incredibly potent attacking force. They used to play some thrilling rugby. They've been a lot more attritional in recent years, and that seems to have grown even greater under Paul. His contract only runs to the end of this season at the moment, and that looks a bit ominous, really. You get the feeling that maybe the St Helens directors are looking for a change in direction, a different sort of coach who could perhaps generate more attacking flair in the Saints team. So we've got to wait and see what happens there. But Paul's had it tough in the time that he's been at the head coach at St Helens, and who knows whether he's still going to be there next year.
Yeah, mate, the amount of stress he's been through over the last few seasons sort of makes me think, who the hell would want to be a head coach?
Yeah, well, when you saw him celebrating,
That's what I was going to say.
Against Leeds, my God, it looked like the release of a pressure valve, didn't it? It was amazing, and he was so happy, and you had to be happy for him. Actually, I felt
Yeah,
really great because I like Paul Wellens as a guy. I've always liked him I liked him as a player. He was a great player, and I like him as a bloke. And but I know how seriously he takes the job. He's very intense about it.
mm.
But it's nice to just get that feeling sometimes, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, mate. And yeah, I was there was no one was celebrating harder than him, and I loved how the cameras shot straight to him. He was dancing along the sideline there.
Mm.
Yeah, it was great scenes, mate. And so you got the championship grand final
Yes,
this weekend as
that's
well,
going to
mate.
be York versus Toulouse on Sunday. York beat Halifax at the weekend. Halifax again had George Whitby playing for them, the St Helens halfback, who many people think should be playing actually for St Helens. I mean, he's their player, and he is a young halfback with a great kicking game, but for some reason is not in the Saints side. But he couldn't quite pull it off for Halifax at York. So York will host the grand final against Toulouse, who came from behind to beat Bradford in France. And it's going to be an interesting one because the winning team won't necessarily be promoted into Super League next year, but they might do, because under this crazy grading system that we now have over here, which can't disappear soon enough from as far as I'm concerned, but the winner of the championship grand final gets 0.25 gradings points, and whichever side wins, that might be enough to just push them into the top 12 teams, because most people are thinking that Salford won't be in the top 12, and and so the winner of this contest could actually just get into the top 12, because most people are thinking that the 12th team this year on gradings will be York, Toulouse, or Bradford. And I think it was quite a bitter blow for Bradford not winning in Toulouse, and therefore not qualifying for that extra 0.25 points. So who knows what's going to happen? And then there's the game itself, which, I mean, it's been an amazing season for York, because I think they started under their new coach Mark Applegarth with about 4 straight defeats in the Championship, and people were beginning to ask questions about Mark. But since then, they've gone on an incredible run of success, and I think they've won something like 20 games in a row, and they finished top of the league with 40 points from 24 games. It's been an amazing season, and Mark Applegarth, who was the coach at Wakefield until a couple of years ago, he's done a remarkable job, and I think he's really a potential coach of the future. Well, I mean, he's a coach now, but he's a potential Super League coach of the future, and I'm delighted for the success that they've enjoyed, and I suspect that York might be one of the clubs that is promoted to Super League next year.
Yeah, please tell me, mate, there's a way we can stream this match.
Well, it's going to be on the Sportsman website. So if that's, I think it's sportsman.co.uk. So if you go onto YouTube and you'll be able to see the match on that website, which it's great. I mean, it should. It would be great if it had a wider audience, but at least it is going to be visible on the Sportsman channel, and they do get quite a lot of people watching on that channel. It's a channel linked to Betfred, and they do a great job, and it's terrific to be able to anticipate watching that game on Sunday afternoon our time.
Yeah, no, absolutely, mate. To make sure I can get up early enough to watch it. What did you say, 4 p.m. your time?
I think it's going to be. Let's just have a quick look. It's
So I might have to stay up.
2 o'clock our time.
Oh yeah,
2
it'll
o'clock.
probably be 11 p.m. our time, so I might still be up.
You might be. You never know. And if you start watching it, you might stay up for the whole, 2 hours or whatever. And let's hope it's a compelling enough game to make you do that.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. All right, mate. We'll get your NRL Grand Final prediction before we get out of here today, mate.
I think Brisbane will win it this year. I think there's something about Brisbane this year that just makes me think they might just have the edge. But gosh, it's so close, isn't it? I think it could be something like, no more than a 6-point margin, and it could even be a golden point game. And
I don't know if I've got another close finish in me.
Well, Melbourne have got some great players, haven't they? Both sides have got some great players, and to see the fullbacks, you start at the fullback, Reece Walsh against Ryan Pappenhausen, and then you go through the rest of the team, and it looks really compelling. It's going to be a really great game, I'm sure.
Oh, mate, yeah. Well, I mean, I only just survived the Raiders game. My blood pressure was through the roof, and then being at the crowd at the game on Sunday, watching that Panthers game, my heart was beating through my chest. So if the Broncos could just come out and smash them, that'd be great for my mental well-being. But I don't know if that'll be possible.
And it would be a great double for Brisbane, wouldn't it? Because the Brisbane Lions won the AFL Grand Final this year, and so a double for Brisbane would be really, really great for the city.
Oh, need a week off, mate. Surely it should be a Queensland statewide public holiday if the Broncos win.
Absolutely, yeah.
Actually, we do have a public holiday on Monday, but in my work, we have to work all public holidays, unfortunately.
What's
but we
the
do
public holiday for on Monday?
I think let me double check. It might be the King's birthday holiday for us.
Oh, right, okay.
It's
amazing.
They always seem to change. Yeah, I mean, it's never really lines up with the the actual day, does it? But
No.
yeah, King's birthday,
Yeah,
6th of
great stuff.
October. Yeah, so, but no, it'll be a great weekend of rugby league, mate. There'll be a lot of sitting on the couch, but can't think of a better way to spend it.
Absolutely. Great stuff, mate. Well, I think we've covered everything, so we'll call it a day there for this week. And thank Rhodri again for coming on earlier in the show, and we look forward to having him on again at some point in the future again. Great stuff.
Absolutely, mate. Well, enjoy your week, mate. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll touch base next week, eh?
We will. Thanks a lot, mate. Cheers.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.